Hello class, welcome to another lesson for social studies. Please on the top of your page write social studies 8th 10.6 for lesson 6 unit 10. As always with the yellow highlighted, please write these down as these will be the answer to the question, so follow along and make sure you pay attention. Starting with the vocabulary, we have declaring that someone is guilty of a crime, which is a conviction. Ridiculed, which is made fun of. Slandered, which means made critical, especially false statements about a person. Tenure, which is the fact of being in a position, the time which has served in that position. So, with this, completely fed up with the interference of President Johnson, Congress decided to limit his power. Johnson was so angry with angry with Congress for taking this over Reconstruction and creating military districts. He argued with the Secretary of War, Edwin Stanton, about the use of the military for purpose to threaten or to remove him from office. He also threatened to remove the officers who were over the military districts. Congress decided to limit Johnson's presidential power so that he could not achieve these objections. These passed two acts, the Tenure of Office Act and the Command of the Army Act. The Tenure of Office Act stated that President Johnson could not remove federal officials who had been appointed with congressional approval without receiving congressional approval from their dismissal. This includes cabinet-level officials, and of course it includes the Secretary of War, Edward Stanton. The Radical Republican Congress had special interest in the Secretary Stanton. He was the only Radical Republican left on the president's cabinet, and he would do what they told him to do concerning the military districts. The Command of the Army Act also forbade the president from issuing direct orders from the army or to the army. Instead, the orders had to go through the head of the army, in this case General Ulysses Grant. The act also prevented President Johnson from ordering grants out of Washington for any reason. President Johnson did not intend to have power over the presidency eroded by these acts of Congress. He believed both acts to be unconstitutional and set out to contest the tenure of office by firing Stanton. Secretary of War Stanton refused to leave his office and barricaded himself in the building. Impeachment proceedings. Congress immediately voted to impeach President Johnson, which means Andrew Johnson was to stand trial in the Senate. They drew up 11 charges against President Johnson, 9 which had to do with the Tenures of Office Act. The other 2 had to do with the speeches he made against Congress, which Republicans claimed had slandered the Congress in the eyes of the public. Of course, the whole affair, including the impeachment and trial, was politically motivated. President Johnson was not guilty of high crimes and misdemeanors as specified by the Constitution. When the votes were counted, President Johnson was acquitted. A few president removed him from the office just because of the radical hate hit him. By the time the presidential election of 1868, most of the former Confederate states had accepted the terms of Reconstruction and had been readmitted to the Union. The states had not been readmitted were Virginia, Mississippi, and Texas. The election of 1868, President Johnson was not a viable candidate for the election of 1868. Though he sought the Democratic nomination, the Democrats understood this and chose Horatio Seymour as their candidate instead of the president. The Republicans knew that the nations were unhappy with the leadership, but they wanted to stay in control. Therefore, they put together a party platform that would please Northern and Western interests and nominated Ulysses S. Grant as their presidential candidate. When the elections were returned in, Grant was the winner. However, the vote was much closer than expected. The margin of victory was found to be less than the number of votes Grant had received from the blacks. The Republicans knew that they were to stand in power and would need to be ensured that blacks did not lose their right to vote. While the wording of the 14th Amendment had not guaranteed the right, it strongly encouraged the states to grant suffrage to the blacks. If they did not, anyone kept them from voting due to race reduced the state's population for purposes of representation in Congress. Still, this was not guaranteed that once readmitted, states would not find a way to prevent blacks from voting. Therefore, Congress created the 15th Amendment to make certain that votes could not be taken away to the people due to race. And that's the 15th Amendment. And that is it.